10 Toxic Things Narcissists Always Do, Carl Jung's Psychology. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone who seems charming, confident, and utterly captivating. But something feels off. They never ask about your day. They interrupt your stories to tell their own, and somehow, you always leave feeling smaller than when you arrived. Sound familiar? You've just encountered what Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, would recognize as narcissistic behavior patterns that have been documented for over a century. And here's the unsettling truth. These behaviors aren't random. They're predictable, systematic, and once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing them everywhere. Welcome back to my channel, where we dive deep into the psychology that shapes our daily lives. Today we're exploring the 10 toxic behaviors that narcissists display with almost mechanical consistency, backed by Carl Jung's groundbreaking insights into the human psyche. Before we begin, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like someone in your life was playing by completely different rules? Like they lived in a reality where only their needs, their feelings, and their perspective mattered? Drop a yes in the comments if this resonates with you, because what we're about to uncover might just change how you see these relationships forever. Over the next hour, we'll dissect each behavior pattern, understand why narcissists engage in these toxic practices, and most importantly, arm you with the psychological tools to protect yourself. We'll explore Jung's concept of the shadow, his insights on persona versus authentic self, and how these apply to narcissistic behavior in modern relationships. And stick around until the end, because I'll share Jung's most powerful technique for dealing with narcissistic manipulation, something that could literally save your mental health if understanding human psychology and protecting your emotional well-being matters to you. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We're building a community of psychologically aware individuals, and your engagement helps more people discover these life-changing insights. Section 1. Understanding the Narcissistic Mind. Now, before we dive into the 10 behaviors, we need to understand what we're really dealing with. Carl Jung didn't just study narcissism as a clinical condition. He explored it as a fundamental human tendency that we all possess to varying degrees. Jung believed that narcissism stems from what he called an inflated ego, a psychological state where someone becomes so identified with their persona, their public mask, that they lose connection with their authentic self and, crucially, with others. Think of it like this. Imagine someone who's become so obsessed with their reflection that they can no longer see anyone else in the mirror. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman I spoke with recently. She described her ex-partner, Mark. He was like a black hole for attention. No matter how much praise, admiration, or validation I gave him, it was never enough. And the strangest part? He genuinely seemed to believe he deserved all of it, while simultaneously believing I deserved none. This perfectly illustrates what Jung identified as the narcissist's central paradox, an inflated sense of self-importance masking deep insecurity, combined with an inability to genuinely connect with others. According to Jung's analytical psychology, narcissists operate from what he called the shadow, the rejected, repressed aspects of personality. But here's the twist. Instead of acknowledging their shadow, they project it onto others while maintaining an idealized self-image. This creates a psychological prison where they can never truly know themselves or others. Understanding this foundation is crucial because it explains why narcissistic behavior is so consistent. It's not conscious malice, it's an unconscious defense system that prioritizes ego protection above all else, including the well-being of others. Toxic behavior. 1. Emotional vampirism. The first toxic behavior we need to discuss is what I call emotional vampirism, the systematic draining of others' emotional energy while contributing nothing in return. Carl Jung wrote extensively about psychological energy, which he called libido, not just sexual energy, but life force itself. Narcissists, according to Jung's framework, have developed an unconscious strategy of stealing this energy from others because they cannot generate sustainable emotional satisfaction internally. Picture this scenario. You come home excited to share good news about a promotion at work. A narcissistic partner might respond with, "That's nice," but wait until you hear about what happened to me today, and then launch into a 45-minute monologue about their own drama, completely hijacking your moment of joy. Why does this happen? Jung would explain this through his concept of psychic inflation. The narcissist's ego is so fragile that any attention given to someone else feels like a threat to their psychological survival. They unconsciously view emotional energy as a zero-sum game. If you're getting attention, they're losing it. Conversations always circle back to them. They seem energized by your problems but bored by your successes. You feel emotionally drained after interactions. They remember your vulnerabilities but forget your achievements. They create drama when attention shifts away from them. I once knew someone who would literally fall ill whenever their friend had important events. Birthday party, sudden migraine. Job interview, family emergency. Wedding planning, mysterious illness. It wasn't conscious manipulation. It was their unconscious mind creating distractions to redirect attention. Jung's advice for dealing with emotional vampires was surprisingly direct. Recognize that their need is bottomless. No amount of your energy will ever fill their void. Set clear boundaries about conversation balance. And don't feel guilty for protecting your emotional resources. Toxic behavior. 2. Gaslighting and reality distortion. The second toxic behavior is perhaps the most psychologically damaging. Gaslighting. The systematic distortion of reality to make others question their own perceptions, memories, and sanity. Carl Jung understood that our perception of reality is constructed through the interaction between our conscious and unconscious minds. Narcissists exploit this by deliberately creating confusion about what actually happened, said, or meant. Here's how it works psychologically. When someone consistently tells you that your memory is wrong, your feelings are invalid, or your perceptions are skewed, it creates what Jung called cognitive dissonance, a painful psychological state where conflicting beliefs exist simultaneously. That never happened. You're being too sensitive. You're imagining things. I never said that. You're crazy if you think everyone else thinks you're overreacting. Let me share Maria's story. Her husband would promise to attend their daughter's school events, then skip them for work. When confronted, he'd say, "I never promised that. You just assumed I'd be there. This is why I can't communicate with you. You hear what you want to hear." After months of this, Maria began recording conversations because she started doubting her own memory. That's the terrifying power of gaslighting. It can make mentally healthy people question their basic cognitive abilities. Jung warned that when we lose trust in our own perceptions, we lose connection with our authentic self. Gaslighting victims often develop what psychologists call learned helplessness. They stop trusting their instincts and become dependent on the gaslighter for their version of reality. Jung advocated for what he called holding the tension, maintaining trust in your own experience even when others challenge it. Keep a private journal of events. Trust your emotional responses. And remember, if someone consistently makes you question your sanity, that's information about them, not you. Toxic behavior. 3. Triangulation and divide and conquer. The third toxic behavior is triangulation, the deliberate creation of conflict between others while positioning themselves as the central figure everyone is, fighting over or trying to please. Jung studied group psychology extensively and identified how certain individuals manipulate group dynamics for personal gain. Triangulation, in Jung's framework, serves the narcissist's need to feel important and in control while avoiding direct confrontation. Imagine 3 people, the narcissist and 2 others. Instead of dealing with conflicts directly, the narcissist will tell person A something negative about person B, tell person B something different about person A, position themselves as the innocent party caught in the middle, encourage both to compete for their favor. In office settings, a narcissistic manager might tell Employee 1, "I think you're ready for a promotion." But Sarah doesn't think you can handle the responsibility. Then tell Sarah, I'm concerned about how employee 1 has been performing lately. What do you think? Suddenly, employee 1 and Sarah are suspicious of each other, while the manager appears wise and central to resolving the conflict they created. According to Jung, this behavior serves multiple unconscious functions, maintains the narcissist's position as the most important person, creates drama that feeds their need for emotional stimulation, prevents others from forming alliances that might challenge them, allows them to avoid taking responsibility for relationship problems. In families, narcissistic parents often triangulate their children. Your sister thinks you're irresponsible, or your brother says you don't visit enough. This creates sibling rivalry while keeping the parent as the central authority figure. Watch for these warning signs. You're frequently hearing about what others supposedly said about you. You feel like you're competing with others for their attention. Direct communication between other parties is discouraged. Conflicts seem to mysteriously appear whenever relationships get too close. Jung's advice: communicate directly with the other parties involved. Often, you'll discover the narcissist has been misrepresenting everyone's position. Toxic behavior. 4. Love bombing followed by devaluation. The fourth toxic pattern is what psychologists call the idealization-devaluation cycle, an intense period of overwhelming attention and affection followed by cruel dismissal and criticism. Carl Jung explained this through his theory of projection. We unconsciously attribute our own traits, feelings, or motivations to others. Narcissists project their idealized self-image onto new people, then feel betrayed when reality doesn't match their projection. During idealization, the narcissist will shower you with excessive praise and attention, make grand romantic gestures or promises, push for rapid intimacy and commitment, seem to understand you perfectly, make you feel like your soulmates, isolate you from other relationships through intense bonding. Jung would explain this as the narcissist falling in love with their own reflection in you. They're not seeing the real you. They're seeing a projected version of their ideal self or ideal partner. This creates an incredibly intoxicating experience for the target, because everyone wants to feel perfectly understood and valued. But here's the inevitable crash. Once you show any human imperfections, tiredness, disagreement, or independent thoughts, the projection shatters. Suddenly, you transform from perfect to worthless in their eyes. Jennifer described her experience. For 3 months, David told me I was the most amazing woman he'd ever met. He wanted to spend every moment together, made elaborate plans for our future, and seemed obsessed with me. Then one day I disagreed with his choice of restaurant, and something shifted. Suddenly I was too opinionated, difficult, and not the person he thought I was. This cycle is particularly damaging because it creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive form of behavioral conditioning. Victims keep trying to get back to the love bombing phase, not realizing it was never based on genuine recognition of who they are. The intensity feels too good to be true. They claim to love you before really knowing you. They push for quick commitment or exclusivity. They seem to have no flaws or negative emotions. You feel pressured to be perfect to maintain their approval. Jung emphasized the importance of gradual relationship development. Healthy love grows slowly as people genuinely get to know each other's authentic selves, including flaws and complexities. Be suspicious of anyone who seems to love an idealized version of you. Midpoint engagement. We're halfway through our exploration of narcissistic behavior patterns, and I want to check in with you. Are you recognizing these patterns in your own experience? The comments section is lighting up with people sharing their stories, and I want to remind you, if any of this is hitting close to home, you're not alone. Take a moment to scroll through the comments. You'll find an incredible community of people supporting each other through these difficult recognitions. If you feel comfortable, share your own experience. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. In the second half of this video, we're going to explore 5 more toxic behaviors, including the most manipulative one I've ever encountered, something Jung called psychological colonization. But first, let's talk about something that might be even more important than recognizing these behaviors. Understanding why they develop in the first place. If this content is valuable to you, please hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 100,000 subscribers who are committed to understanding psychology and protecting their mental health. Your subscription helps more people discover these insights. Understanding the origins. Before we continue, I think it's crucial to understand that narcissistic behavior patterns usually develop as childhood survival strategies. Jung believed that what we call narcissism often begins as a child's unconscious adaptation to emotional neglect, inconsistent parenting, or trauma. According to Jung, healthy personality development requires what he called mirroring, having our authentic selves seen, accepted, and reflected back by caregivers. When this doesn't happen consistently, children may develop a false self, an exaggerated persona designed to earn the love and attention they need to survive. Here's the heartbreaking irony. The behaviors that once helped them survive as children now sabotage their adult relationships. The child who learned to be charming and special to get attention becomes the adult who can't form genuine connections. The child who learned that showing vulnerability meant being hurt becomes the adult who can't access empathy. Understanding origins doesn't excuse harmful behavior, it just helps us respond more skillfully. As Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Sometimes, recognizing the wounded child behind narcissistic behavior helps us protect ourselves more effectively because we stop taking it personally. Toxic behavior. Darker 5. Emotional blackmail and manipulation. The fifth toxic behavior is emotional blackmail, using guilt, fear, obligation, or shame to control others' behavior and decisions. Carl Jung understood that emotions are powerful psychological forces that can be weaponized. Narcissists become expert at identifying others' emotional triggers and using them for control rather than connection. Guilt tripping. After everything I've done for you. Threats. If you leave me, I'll hurt myself. Playing victim. You're the only good thing in my life. Future faking. We'll get married next year. With no intention. Silent treatment. Withdrawing affection as punishment. Rage cycles. Explosive anger to shut down opposition. Jung identified that manipulators instinctively understand something crucial. Most people will do almost anything to avoid feeling guilty, afraid, or responsible for someone else's pain. They exploit our natural empathy and turn it into a control mechanism. Robert's story illustrates this perfectly. His mother would call him multiple times daily with emergencies. Headaches that might be brain tumors, financial worries, loneliness. When Robert tried to set boundaries, she'd say, "I guess I just won't call anymore. I don't want to be a burden. I'll just handle everything alone." The emotional blackmail was clear. If you don't give me unlimited access to your time and energy, you're a bad son, and my suffering will be your fault. Modern neuroscience confirms Jung's intuition. Chronic emotional manipulation actually changes brain chemistry. Victims develop hypervigilance, anxiety, and decision-making, paralysis because they're constantly walking on emotional landmines. Jung's approach to emotional blackmail was revolutionary for its time. You are not responsible for other adults' emotional reactions to your boundaries. He taught that healthy relationships involve mutual responsibility, not one person carrying the emotional burden for both. Notice when decisions feel forced or urgent. Pay attention to physical sensations during conversations, tension, nausea, anxiety. Practice saying, "Let me think about that and get back to you." Remember, their emergency is not automatically your responsibility. Toxic behavior 6, projection and blame shifting. The sixth toxic behavior is projection, unconsciously attributing their own thoughts, feelings, motivations, or behaviors to others, combined with refusing to take responsibility for their actions. This was one of Carl Jung's most significant discoveries. He identified projection as a universal human tendency. but noted that narcissists engage in it compulsively and without self-awareness. As Jung famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But narcissists cannot complete this self-reflection. A narcissist who is cheating will constantly accuse their partner of being unfaithful. Lying will claim others are dishonest and untrustworthy. Manipulative will say others are trying to control them. Selfish will complain that everyone else is self-centered. Abandoning relationships will claim others always leave them. According to Jung, projection serves as a defense mechanism that protects the ego from recognizing unacceptable aspects of itself. By placing their shadow qualities onto others, narcissists maintain their idealized self-image while avoiding the painful work of self-examination. Manager Sarah consistently took credit for her team's successes while blaming them for any failures. When confronted about this pattern, she responded, "The problem with this team is that nobody takes responsibility for their mistakes. Everyone here just tries to throw others under the bus." The irony was invisible to her. She was describing her own behavior while projecting it onto others. Narcissists have mastered what I call the responsibility shuffle. Deflection. You made me do it. Minimization. It wasn't that bad. Justification. I had no choice. Counterattack. What about when you... Victimization. You're being cruel to me. Jung observed that people who cannot take responsibility for their actions cannot learn from them. This is why narcissists repeat the same destructive patterns. They literally cannot see their role in creating the problems they complain about. When someone consistently blames others for problems that follow them everywhere, Jung advised paying attention to the pattern rather than the individual accusations. As he noted, where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. Toxic behavior. 7. Intermittent reinforcement and hot-cold behavior. The 7th, toxic behavior is intermittent reinforcement, unpredictably alternating between warmth and coldness, creating an addictive cycle that keeps others constantly trying to earn consistent affection. While Jung didn't use modern addiction terminology, he understood that inconsistent emotional rewards create the strongest psychological bonds. He observed that people become most attached to relationships that provide unpredictable moments of intense connection. Modern research confirms Jung's intuition. Intermittent reinforcement triggers the same brain pathways as gambling addiction. The uncertainty of when the next reward will come creates powerful psychological dependency. The cycle typically looks like this. Hot phase, intense attention, affection, promises. Withdrawal, gradual cooling, distance, criticism. Cold phase, rejection, anger, silent treatment. Panic response, target tries harder to reconnect. Return, brief hot phase to prevent abandonment. Repeat, cycle continues with increasing intensity. Michael shared his experience. Lisa would be incredibly loving and attentive for days, making me feel like the most important person in the world. Then suddenly she'd become cold and distant. I'd spend weeks trying to figure out what I did wrong, walking on eggshells, doing everything to get back to those good moments. When she'd finally warm up again, the relief was so intense it felt like falling in love all over again. Jung would explain this as the narcissist unconsciously training others to accept less while working harder. The unpredictability ensures the other person never feels secure enough to set boundaries or make demands. It mimics the natural rhythm of early romantic relationships. The high periods feel more intense because of the contrast. Victims blame themselves during low periods. The intermittent reward creates hope that things will improve. It gradually erodes self-worth and independence. You feel like you're constantly trying to earn their good mood. Your emotional state depends entirely on their treatment of you. You make excuses for their cold behavior. The good times feel almost euphoric in comparison. You find yourself changing your behavior to avoid their withdrawal. Jung emphasized that recognizing the pattern is the first step to freedom. He taught that healthy relationships provide consistent emotional safety, not thrilling uncertainty. Toxic behavior. 8. rage and narcissistic injury. The eighth toxic behavior is narcissistic rage, explosive, disproportionate anger triggered by any perceived threat to their ego or any reminder of their human limitations. Carl Jung identified this as perhaps the most dangerous aspect of narcissistic behavior. He understood that narcissistic rage isn't ordinary anger. It's a primitive, ego-protective response that can escalate to truly frightening levels. Being contradicted or corrected, not receiving expected praise or attention, others receiving recognition they want, being held accountable for their behavior, any form of criticism, however gentle, being ignored or treated as ordinary, having their lies or inconsistencies exposed. Jung explained that narcissists experience any challenge to their inflated self-image as a psychological survival threat. Their rage isn't about the specific incident. It's about protecting their entire sense of self from collapse. Amanda described her ex-husband's rage. I once suggested we try a different restaurant than his choice. His face changed completely. It was like watching someone transform into a different person. He screamed at me for 20 minutes about how I never appreciated anything he did, how ungrateful I was, how I was trying to control him over a restaurant suggestion. The neighbors called the police because they thought someone was being murdered. 1 trigger event, something threatens their ego. 2, internal collapse, brief moment of vulnerability. 3, rage defense, explosive anger to restore superiority. 4, blame projection, making others responsible for their reaction. 5, no accountability, refusing to acknowledge the disproportionate response. Jung warned that narcissistic rage can become physically dangerous because the person experiencing it genuinely believes they're fighting for psychological survival. They may destroy property, make threats, become physically aggressive, engage in stalking or harassment, seek revenge through various means. After narcissistic rage, there's typically no genuine apology, might say sorry, but blame you for making them angry. Minimization, I wasn't that angry. Expectation that you'll get over it quickly. Possible brief love bombing to smooth things over. No actual change in behavior. Jung was unusually direct about this behavior. If someone shows a pattern of narcissistic rage, prioritize your physical and emotional safety above all else. He believed that people in the grip of narcissistic fury are temporarily disconnected from normal human empathy and conscience. Never try to reason with someone in narcissistic rage. Have an exit strategy from every interaction. Document incidents for your own clarity. Don't take responsibility for their emotional reactions. Seek professional support if you're dealing with this regularly. Toxic behavior, hoovering and manipulation during separation. The 9th toxic behavior is hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner brand, the desperate attempts to suck people back into the relationship when they try to leave or establish independence. Carl Jung understood that behind the narcissist's inflated ego lies a terrifying fear of abandonment. When someone tries to leave, it triggers what Jung called a psychological emergency, threatening the narcissist's entire sense of self. When facing abandonment, narcissists will cycle through love bombing. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Promises of change. I'll go to therapy. I'll be different. False emergencies. Sudden illness or crises requiring your help. Guilt manipulation. You're abandoning me when I need you most. Threats. I'll hurt myself if you leave. Using children or others. Manipulating mutual connections. Stalking behaviors. Showing up uninvited. Monitoring social media. Jung identified that hoovering exploits the victim's natural empathy and attachment. The narcissist unconsciously knows exactly which emotional buttons to push because they've been studying your responses throughout the relationship. Sarah's story. When I told James I was moving out, he transformed overnight. The man who had been cold and critical for months suddenly became the person I fell in love with. He brought flowers, wrote love letters, promised we'd take that trip to Europe he'd been putting off for years. When sweet didn't work, he called me crying about his father's health. Then he threatened suicide. Then he showed up at my work. It was like he had a playbook of every way to pull me back in. Hoovering often involves cycling rapidly through different manipulation strategies. Morning. I love you, please come back. Afternoon. You're cruel for abandoning me. Evening. I'm having chest pains, I need you. Next day, I've changed, let me prove it. It exploits trauma bonding from the relationship, creates cognitive dissonance. Maybe they really have changed. Triggers guilt and responsibility feelings, offers hope that the good times can return, uses familiar emotional manipulation patterns. Jung was clear about this. Real psychological change is slow, difficult work that happens primarily through professional therapy and deep self-reflection. Rapid personality changes during separation attempts are almost always temporary manipulation tactics. Expect the hoovering, it's predictable behavior. Don't respond to any contact attempts. Response due reinforcement. Block all communication channels if possible. Have friends, family monitor for escalating behavior. Keep a record of all contact attempts. Remember, their desperation is about control, not love. Toxic behavior. 10. Psychological colonization. The 10th and perhaps most insidious, toxic behavior is what I call psychological colonization. The gradual replacement of your authentic self with a version that serves the narcissist's needs. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying what he called individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. He understood that narcissists, unable to complete this process themselves, unconsciously attempt to colonize others' identity development. It happens so gradually that victims often don't notice. Values replacement. Your beliefs slowly change to match theirs. Interest absorption. You abandon hobbies that don't include them. Social isolation. Friends who don't understand are gradually eliminated. Decision dependency. You stop trusting your own judgment. Emotional regulation. Your moods become entirely dependent on their approval. Identity erosion. You lose touch with who you were before them. Jung would recognize this as the ultimate narcissistic strategy, not just controlling your behavior, but actually reshaping your inner world to serve their psychological needs. Lisa's transformation over 3 years. When I met Tom, I was a confident teacher who loved hiking, reading, and spending time with my close girlfriends. Gradually, he convinced me that teaching wasn't ambitious enough, that hiking was a waste of weekends we could spend together, that my books were escapist nonsense, and that my friends were jealous of our relationship. By year 3, I was working in sales, his field, spending every weekend at his family gatherings, reading only business books he recommended, and had isolated myself from all my closest friends. I didn't even realize I had disappeared until I looked in the mirror one day and didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Phase 1. Subtle suggestions about improvements. Phase 2. Criticism disguised as concern. Phase 3. Rewards for compliance, punishment for resistance. Phase 4. Complete replacement of original identity. Phase 5. Victim defends the colonization as growth. You've changed dramatically since entering the relationship. Old friends comment that you seem different. You can't remember why you used to enjoy certain activities. You find yourself defending choices that don't feel authentically yours. You've lost touch with your own opinions and preferences. You feel like you need permission to make basic life decisions. Jung understood that recovering from psychological colonization is uniquely difficult because victims must rediscover who they were before the relationship while also growing into who they want to become. Reconnect with pre-relationship friends and activities. Journal about who you were before this relationship. Make small decisions without consulting them. Notice which of your opinions actually came from them. Seek therapy to process the identity confusion. Practice saying, "I don't know," when asked for preferences. Jung's ultimate protection method. Now I promise to share. Carl Jung's most powerful technique for dealing with narcissistic manipulation, and this could literally transform how you navigate these toxic relationships. Jung called it conscious relating. The practice of maintaining awareness of both your own psychological patterns and the other person's unconscious motivations during every interaction. 1. Shadow recognition. Jung taught that we must first acknowledge our own capacity for narcissistic behavior. Ask yourself, what part of me is attracted to this person's confidence? What insecurities are they triggering in me? This self-awareness prevents you from becoming psychologically dependent on their validation. 2. Projection. Withdrawal. When someone consistently blames, criticizes, or projects onto you, Jung advised, asking, "What are they telling me about themselves?" Instead of absorbing their projections, you learn to see them as information about the other person's inner world. 3. Emotional sovereignty. This was Jung's revolutionary concept, taking complete responsibility for your emotional reactions while refusing to take responsibility for others' emotions. You can empathize without being enslaved by someone else's. Emotional manipulation for authentic response. Instead of reacting from your wounded inner child or defensive ego, Jung taught responding from your authentic adult self. This means neither attacking back nor submitting, but maintaining your truth with calm clarity. When a narcissist tries to gaslight you, instead of defending your memory, you might say, "I remember this differently, and that's okay. We can agree to disagree." When they rage, instead of trying to calm them or defend yourself, you might say, "I can see you're very upset. I'm going to give you space to process that." Healing and recovery. If you've recognized yourself as a victim of narcissistic abuse, Jung's approach to healing was both compassionate and empowering. He understood that recovery isn't just about leaving toxic relationships. It's about understanding why you were vulnerable to them in the first place. 1. Grief the illusion. Jung emphasized that you must mourn not just the relationship, but the person you thought they were. This involves accepting that the love bombing phase was manipulation, not genuine love. 2. Reclaim your shadow. Ironically, victims of narcissistic abuse often need to reconnect with their own healthy aggression and self-advocacy. Jung taught that being too nice or too understanding can make us vulnerable to exploitation. 3. Rebuild your inner authority. Narcissistic relationships erode your ability to trust your own judgment. Jung's individuation process involves gradually learning to validate your own perceptions and make decisions from your authentic self rather than seeking external approval. 4. Integrate the experience. Rather than trying to forget the relationship, Jung advocated integrating the experience into your larger life story. What did this teach you about your patterns, your boundaries, your needs? Jung believed that surviving narcissistic abuse, while traumatic, could actually accelerate psychological growth if properly processed. Many survivors develop deeper empathy, stronger boundaries, and more authentic self-knowledge than they had before. Work with a therapist who understands narcissistic abuse. Join support groups with other survivors. Practice daily self-care and emotional regulation. Gradually rebuild your support network. Engage in activities that reconnect you with your authentic interests. Learn to sit with your own emotions without immediately seeking external validation. Jung firmly believed that no experience, however painful, is wasted if we can extract its psychological gold. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often become some of the most psychologically aware, emotionally intelligent, and genuinely empathetic people, precisely because they've learned to distinguish between authentic and manipulative behavior. Red flags and prevention. Now that we understand the patterns, let's talk about prevention. Jung believed that knowledge is our best defense against unconscious manipulation. According to Jung's framework, watch for these early warning signs: too much, too soon, excessive compliments, rapid intimacy pushes, immediate future planning, perfect victim hunting. They ask probing questions about your insecurities, past relationships, support systems, subtle boundary testing, small violations to see how you respond. Grandiose storytelling. Everything about them is the best, worst, or most dramatic. Lack of genuine curiosity. They don't ask follow-up questions about your experiences. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. Your friends and family express concern about changes in you. You find yourself making excuses for their behavior to others. You've stopped doing things you used to love. Your self-confidence has dramatically decreased. You feel confused about your own memories and perceptions. Jung taught that the best prevention is developing what he called psychological discrimination. The ability to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy relationship dynamics from the very beginning. Maintain strong individual identity even in relationships. Keep connections with friends and family who knew you before. Regular self-reflection and journaling. Trust your body's stress responses. Don't rush into exclusive commitments. Value consistency over intensity. Supporting others. If someone you care about is in a relationship with a narcissist, Jung's approach was both patient and strategic. Don't directly attack their partner. This will trigger defensiveness. Don't give ultimatums about choosing between you and them. Don't try to rescue them before they're ready. Don't enable by making excuses for the narcissist's behavior. Ask gentle questions. How did that make you feel? Rather than, that's terrible. Share observations. I've noticed you seem more stressed lately. Rather than, your partner is toxic. Maintain connection. Keep inviting them to activities, even if they say no. Plant seeds. Share articles or videos like this one casually. Be patient. Remember that leaving takes an average of 7 attempts. Jung understood that people have to come to their own realizations about toxic relationships. Your job is to be a consistent, loving presence who reminds them of who they were before this relationship began. Final insights and call to action. Let's summarize Jung's wisdom about narcissistic behavior. These patterns are predictable and systematic. Once you know what to look for, you can protect yourself. Understanding doesn't require forgiveness. You can have compassion for someone's origins while still protecting yourself from their behavior. Recovery is possible. With proper support and self-work, you can not only heal but become stronger. Prevention is your best defense. Developing psychological awareness protects you from future manipulation. This week, I want you to practice Jung's conscious relating technique. In every interaction, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What might this person's behavior be telling me about their inner world? Am I responding from my authentic self or from my wounds? The comments section has become an incredible support community. Please share your insights, your struggles, and your victories. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. I've put together a free resource guide with Jung's techniques for dealing with narcissistic behavior, recommended books, and therapy resources. You can find the link in the description below. If this video has helped you understand your relationships better, please subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit. Knowledge is power, and psychological awareness can literally save lives. Remember, you deserve relationships built on mutual respect, genuine care, and authentic connection. Carl Jung spent his life proving that psychological awareness can free us from unconscious patterns that keep us trapped. You have more power than you know to create healthy, loving relationships, starting with the one you have with yourself. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore Jung's insights on building authentic, lasting relationships. Until then, take care of yourself, trust your instincts, and remember, your mental health matters.